定刻となりましたので
As it is time, we'd like to start the Renewable Energy Institute's New Year's Seminar 2026, Making Japan Resilient Through Renewable Energy. The material which is on the screen can be accessed through the website of the Institute. To open the seminar, we'd like to invite Executive Director of the Renewable Energy Institute, Mr. Teruyuki Ono, to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, Mr. Ono.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for the New Year seminar of REI. 2026, I'm sure you have heard the news report when it comes to security of the world and the future of the world. We are so concerned because of the various developments ongoing. As for climate change policies, the United States and President Trump has announced U.S. withdrawal not only from the Paris Agreement but also from the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. President Trump 2 days ago at the Davos the meeting, the speech, he stated Green New Scam, and he has trumpeted his own policy of fossil fuel, the comeback the policy, rather than renewables, the energy transition, as well as transition towards decarbonization. Considering all of these developments, that the government of Japan is maintaining strictly its policy and goal of the green transition and green transformation to try to reduce dependency on fossil fuels and expand decarbonized energy, and going for energy security and industrial competitiveness strengthening, as well as decarbonization. We are quite encouraged of this important decision, and the government is maintaining these policies because the Japanese businesses, the local governments and associations are not confused by all these developments, but rather adamant in going for renewables as well as decarbonization expansion. The other decarbonized power source is the nuclear energy as well as zero emission the thermal power. For the nuclear, 2 days ago, Kashiwazaki Kariwa, a nuclear power plant, has been restarted, but it was stopped in just 1 day. Even if it may be restarted, it will be only about 10% of the energy mix. It is far from the 20% target of the government. The other power source, which is the thermal power with the CCS, still uses coal as well as natural gas. So it would not contribute much to the conversion from the fossil fuels. Not only if an ammonia and hydrogen will be used or produced from the renewables. For the major role to be played to substitute the fossil fuels will be renewables. In order to accelerate renewables, for the government policies, you need to strengthen as well as change the course slightly. For this New Year's seminar, we have 20 of the researchers and staff of the REI who will be discussing the industry decarbonization as well as building decarbonization. What is the current state of play and what would be needed going forward? All in all, it will be a 3-hour-long event, but I hope that you will bear with us until the very end. And I thank you for your kind attendance.
Ono-san.
Thank you very much to Mr. Ono. We will now proceed with the program. Session 1 is titled Solar Power Leads the Energy Transition. We ask the participants in the panel to please proceed up onto the stage.
のセッションの進行
The moderator for this session is Director at the Renewable Energy Institute, Mr. Masaya Ishida. Over to you, Mr. Ishida.
エネルギー財団の石田
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As has been kindly introduced, my name is Ita from REI. I'll be the five of us in the panel who will discuss the solar PV. And towards the end, the panelists will speak in English. Now, let me first of all explain the latest trends. As you can see here on the slide, this is for the fiscal year 2024. Looking at the whole of Japan, the energy mix. The solar is already close to 10%, which is contributing greatly to decarbonization of the Japanese society. For the past 10 years, on the left-hand side, which is the past 10 years, the installments as well as the annual the power generation given on the right-hand side. But for past 12 months or so, the situation is stymied because the large-scale siting candidates are being reduced in number. So the investments seems to be reduced somewhat more recently. So that is the reason for the sluggish situation. On the other hand, the government of Japan have put forward the 7th Strategic Energy Plan. And it says that it will go for 23 to 29 percentage points in the energy mix for the solar, which is about 1.5 times to twice the volume right now. It is still very significant. We need to have a growth rate which is double the speed up until now in order to achieve the goal number. Can we actually make this happen? There's a lot of potential still. And you can see this is from JPEA, Japan Photovoltaic Energy Association analysis. And you can see the housing as well as non-residential buildings on the rooftop. There's a lot of potential for installing the solar panels. And if you can even achieve 30%, you will be able to do a lot. For the agricultural land category, if we can introduce up until 10%, it would be a significant growth. On the whole of Japan, there are about 10% or so land being abandoned from farming. So if we could utilize such land for solar panels to be installed, there will be a lot of possibilities going forward. And generation cost is coming down steadily. This is also from the JPEA. In 2025, if you see the yellow the portion, per kilowatt hour, it is 11.5 yen. On top runner basis, it is 8.5 yen per kilowatt hour. And looking at the average price in the wholesale market, this is 11 yen to 12 yen. So it is even lower than that level. And as the years progress, it will be less than 10 yen per kilowatt hour. So with solar energy to be installed, we will be able to see even better cost performance. And with this as a backdrop, the users of the power will have long-term agreement, the PPAs, the power purchase agreements. And looking at the sites where the solar panels are installed, the smaller to the larger scale, the projects, almost every day you see news reports. And you can see the largest ever project for Kansai International Airport. The vacant lots have been utilized. And also, for the solar powers on a distant location, off-site PPAs are also being adopted by many local governments. Now, looking at the press releases for off-site PPAs to be introduced, we have counted, and every year it is growing in number, and this year it will grow further. So on the rooftop, not just agricultural land or rooftop, even on the ground, on terrestrial basis, there will be increased installments. But more, unfortunately, more recently, for improper installments of solar panels in the local areas. There are a lot of public opinion opposition, especially in Kushiro City. And the national government have come up with countermeasure package against mega solars. So if there is an improper case being found, the government will strictly restrict those projects. But at the same time, in the package, there is promotion measures being included. That's to say, to have the more new type of the solar projects to be promoted, and also working closely with the local community. So there will be many measures to be undertaken in order to further promote the solar power. For these 6 agenda items, I would like to ask each researcher responsible for each area to make the presentation, starting with perovskite solar cells, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Senior Researcher Omi. I would like to talk about perovskite cells and living in harmony with community. The perovskite cells are focusing much attention, and so the overall solar PV introduction goals have been introduced, 200 to 280 gigawatts. Of this, perovskite accounts for 20 gigawatts, so that would be about 10% of the 200 to 280 gigawatts. But the major thrust is silicon solar panels. That will not change, but from 200 to 2030, every year we need to increase by 2 gigawatts each on the part of the government. Development and penetration, they are trying to back this up. And the potential, the most important is buildings. So I'd like to discuss some demonstration experiments. This is YKKAP's demonstration experiment. Installation as inner window unit on existing building. This is what it is. It's integrated with the construction material, and it's the glass type perovskite inner window, which is installed afterwards. You will be able to see the view on the outside because it is transparent. Where it is colored, that is the power generation layer. With laser processing, it's very attractive in terms of design. And with regard to low bearing capacity sites, there have been experiments. Kitakishu is experimenting at JR Hakata Station in the station platforms. And the bearing capacity is under 5 or under 3 kilograms per 1 square meters. So the normal silicone solar panels cannot be installed. So if it's a very light perovskite cell, it can be installed. So demonstration is underway. This is the combined installation with sheet products. Is a simple installation method, and on the sheet, the perovskite is attached. And when the actual construction takes place, the sheet as a whole is installed. And it's very simple. The train station, before the start of the trains and the end of the operation of trains, it's 4 hours. But this construction can be completed in 3 hours. And as shown in the previous installation, there is also an installation with sheets. It's a Fukuoka public building. Waterproof sheets, and integration with that is the experiment. Perovskite cells and waterproof sheets can be installed at the same time, reducing cost. On the right-hand side is Kobe Airport. That's weed control sheet, and And on the weed control sheet, there's a film type of perovskite cells which are attached. It's on the side of the runway at airports to ensure safety of the aircraft. The glass type silicon solar panels are restricted, but in the case of sheet type products, there is no safety issue here, and installation is possible, and we can draw on the full potential of the airport. And so demonstration experiments are underway with this as an objective. At the construction sites, mesh sheets are used, and perovskite cells have been attached to that. And on the mesh sheet, or between the mesh sheets, we connected using fasteners or zippers on existing buildings or on the side of walls. Installation is very easy because of the lightweight, and it's very easy to handle. So it draws on the potential of the existing buildings, and studies are underway to do more of this. And there are still challenges in the installation of this. The largest is the high generation costs. The government has a verification committee, and according to this verification committee, by 2040, compared to silicon solar panels, the generation cost is 2 times. And so silicon panels will become cheaper, but perovskite is inevitably very expensive. The existing technologies are such that perovskite will complement where silicon PVs are not possible to realize cheap perovskite technology development, and manufacturers' capex investment should be supported by government. That is important. And while the cost is very high, the public facilities may take the initiative in installing to encourage the private sector markets, and to private companies that would like to install perovskite cells. The government should provide assistance by being creative with the installation. The main body cost may not be reduced in cost, but in terms of construction cost, price may be reduced, and the government and private operators may provide information on the market size, and to encourage the manufacturers. As for the installation method and the site of installation, PVs are penetrating, and we need to deal with laws and regulations and compliance with regulations that differ depending on installations and methods and locations, formulation and regular revision of guidelines, or proposals for regulatory relaxation from manufacturers and local governments to the national government. There should be a positive proposals for changes in regulations to make the introduction of new technology compatible on buildings. New technologies are very promising. When it comes to ground installation, we should dispel with the negative impressions, so that positive impressions can be stressed. And what is necessary here is coexistence, living in harmony with the local community. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of trouble with the local community and local governments when it comes to PV panels and renewable energy, when the local governments are introducing some kind of regulation. In 2014, the local government's ordinances and related to RE, renewable energy, totaled 403 in total. And of this, some kind of regulation on RE, the ordinance was 70% of the whole. And as for ordinance that promoted RE is only 10%. So regulation is dominant. Part of the mega solar operators cause trouble, and it creates a negative image for PV generation. And there are actually problems which are rising. There is the issue of Kushiro wet field, and so Kushiro is moving ahead with zoning in Japan based on Promotion Act on to promote to prevent global warming, there are promotion areas where the solar PV is promoted, and then there are different areas where that is prohibited. Last month, the promotion areas, there's the prohibition area and promotion area, and so a map has been disclosed quite recently, and this is a draft of the map, and in Toyama City, they have designated promotion areas, but there are very few cities that do zoning, and so the central government and the prefectural governments should promote this kind of an activity to resolve regional issues. RE should be introduced. Such positive activities are necessary. In the Ishikari city of Hokkaido, there is a RE zone which has been designated an industrial complex where RE is 100%, and they're attracting businesses for 24 hours, 365 days during the year. They have attracted a data center which is solely 100% based on renewable energy. And this is Iwate Prefecture, where this is the site of a disaster. And so making use of this site, mega solar and storage batteries have been installed. And what is interesting about Miyako City, Iwate Prefecture, is that Miyako City itself is providing finance, and the power generation leads to revenues, and land which could not be used readily is being used for this site. So resolving issues and tying that with renewable energy promotion, I believe, is very important. Thank you.
My name is Tsukamoto from REI. I would be explaining on solar sharing and then looking at the process for making mandatory of the solar panels to be installed in the buildings. For solar sharing, agriculture and power generation to be reconciled in one project. This is a very new framework. From 2013 onwards, when the government has come up with a policy in the past 10 years or so, it is more than 6,000 in number for the projects. For solar sharing, there are many different crops to be cultivated. About 60% or so are grains like rice, wheat, and barley, as well as vegetables, and also fruits, those edible the products. The remainder will be the ornamental plants, including flowers and such. Solar sharing, for example, is to invite over new farmers and to open up abandoned farming land. So solar sharing could encourage and reboot the further farming and agriculture. And I think we need to further improve on the system to introduce even better projects and to appeal to the public so that the people will be able to have a better understanding. And there are many good examples and case studies. I have visited many different farms and have seen with my own eyes. And there are 4 effective measures to boost solar sharing. Let me explain. Firstly, is to enhance the value of the crops to be cultivated. This is in Yamagata Prefecture, where rice is being planted, a Mitsuba farm. The solar panels are movable panels where the angles can be changed depending upon the weather, as well as the growth situation of the crop, the quality, as well as the generation volume could be easily be changed. And in 1982, the solar sharing has been started. Every year, the rice being harvested are given the first prize in the quality ranking. In Kanagawa Prefecture, blueberries are being cultivated. It's Sagamiko Farm. In this example, they have a membership farm the program to have stable revenue. And as you can see, this is for tourists. About 36 different types and varieties of blueberries could be enjoyed. So many people gather. And when the blueberries are harvested, it could be produced into jams as well as smoothies. So they are making into agricultural business. And agricultural revenue is now above the revenue from power generation. Now, the third case is to develop power generation suitable for farmlands. This is a farm, Yoshida, the brewery, which cultivates a rice crop suited for brewing sake. And in its own, the rice paddy, because there are a lot of snow in the winter, but with the vertical installment of the solar panels, the snow will not be accumulated on top of the panel. And there is no difference in terms of the yield for the rice crop. The fourth case is conserve and recover farmlands. This is in Tochigi Prefecture, where wheat and soybeans are being cultivated, which is the green crop at the farm. They have organic farming. And with this organic farming, they can preserve biodiversity, including insects and flowers. And with organic farming, it is different from tourism-oriented agriculture, where they use pesticides. And compared to those farms, the yield is better for this organic farm. And they have been able to have more abundant biodiversity for their farmland. In order to further increase such cases, I have listed what could be appropriate measures. There are, of course, challenges as well. One is the very expensive cost, because you have to install the panels on top of the footings, which means that construction work will be quite expensive. And one possible solution is to have preferential treatment in FIT and FIP purchase price. And I very much hope that this could be introduced for solar sharing as well. And we need to see strengthening of subsidies system by both the national government and the local governments. And to have priority procurement to be provided for the small-scale power generators with the higher evaluation given by the users. Another challenge is that there are a lot of disparities from locality to locality in terms of temporary land diversion permits. You need to have those permits from the Agricultural Commission of each municipalities. But the process seems to be varied from municipality to municipality. So there are certain communities where it will be difficult to introduce solar sharing programs. So we would like to have the agricultural commissions to have a thorough understanding of the national government guidelines. We need to widely disseminate such information and try to encourage understanding by sharing the success cases. The third challenge is the data for cultivation as well as power generation seems to be lacking. The national government accumulate the data, and they have created the database. But for solar sharing to be promoted for newcomers and also for existing farmers would like to have access to such relevant information, but it is difficult for them to have the access. So the government needs to create a system where easier access could be provided. Or they could introduce model plans for the local research institutions so that the data could be accumulated and shared. Next, I would like to talk about mandatory installation for buildings. Let me explain the latest developments. Up until Kyoto City and Kyoto Prefecture, they have already implemented the mandatory system. From April 2025, Tokyo Metropolitan Government and Kawasaki City Government have started for the residential houses as well. And because these are big cities, the number of such buildings are indeed very huge. So they have gone ahead of the other cities to set good models. And for Sendai City and Nagano prefectures, they are also considering to make it mandatory as well. And Gunma Prefecture has already introduced the system. There have been many good effects for accelerating solar power that the citizens are able to understand the benefit of utility bills coming down. The citizens are most satisfactory that they have been able to reduce the utility bills for them. With solar panels to be introduced, initial costs were too expensive, so the negative image loomed large. But right now, people can enjoy declining utility bills, and such information has spread widely. The next is that they can prepare for blackouts. There are many natural disasters happening in this country, so there's a lot of necessity for this. And they now understand that there are a lot of subsidies being given, which lower the hurdle for introducing the system. Now, going forward, there are many challenges that we need to overcome. And what would be the outlook? That's to say, there is not much progress seen for collective housing compared to the discrete housing. The FIT and FIP purchase prices are coming down significantly, so there is not a lot of incentives. And the benefits are being provided to only the owners, so the tenants are not able to enjoy the benefits. But if you can have power conditioner to be installed for each different units of the collective housing, the tenants can also enjoy the benefits. And especially the condominium on her sales. By introducing the system, they can sell the electricity and they can enjoy the revenue. And now BIPVs are being installed greatly. Thank you.
Okay. 実際のと申します。すみません。
My name is Zisler.
Focus on the solar PV supply chain. And the first point I would like to make is that solar power is really the superstar of the energy transition. And therefore, its supply chain is of critical importance. On this chart, you can see that since 2022, solar power has been the leading technology for new electricity generation. Over the past 40 years, no other technology managed to achieve being the largest technology in terms of growth for 4 years. In 2025, the growth in solar power electricity generation was almost as big as that of coal in 2021, which was really a record. And the growth in coal was mainly because of the rebound in electricity consumption after the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. So a lot of coal decreased in 2020 and increased then in 2021. According to the latest World Energy Outlook by the International Energy Agency, published in November 2025, in all scenarios, solar PV will be the #1 technology for electricity generation in the world by 2040, with a share of 25 to 40% of the world total electricity generation. The solar PV supply chain is confronted with two challenges. The first one is oversupply. That is, there is too much manufacturing capacity, and this is what you can see on this chart. Across all segments of the solar PV supply chain, there is too much manufacturing capacity. compared to the demand. This is true for polysilicon, ingot, wafer, cell, modules. As a result, there is a fierce competition among manufacturers and between the first quarter of 2024 and the third quarter of 2025, you can see that the world's 5 largest cell and module manufacturers, they lost $6 billion. So customers can enjoy cheap solar PV, but for manufacturers, it's very difficult. And for companies to enter this business, it's also very difficult. A second challenge, China's overwhelming dominance. Across all segments of the solar PV supply chain, we can see that China and Chinese companies, they have a very, very high market shares, especially upstream for polysilicon, ingot, and wafer, and to a lesser extent, downstream for cells and modules. However, there are positive developments to be observed in terms of global diversification. And on this chart, you can see how other countries than China, the rest of the world, is investing or managing to build new factories for solar PV products. The pink dots is for projects that have been announced. The blue dots is for projects that are making significant progress, which means they are either under construction or their financing has been secured. For cell and modules, we can see the share of the rest of the world is dramatically increasing, reaching almost 30 to 40%, which is, I think, quite positive. Also, upstream, for polysilicon, ingots, and wafer, we can see that there is some progress. However, it's more difficult. The reason is that for these segments, capital requirements are higher. So that means projects are more risky and also less bankable. But still, progress is taking place. Who are the countries leading this global diversification of this solar supply chain? It's mainly India, the United States, and Southeast Asian countries, in particular Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And we are also seeing some progress in North Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and in the Middle East, in a country like Oman. And this will be the final slide of my presentation, focusing on Japan. So the Japanese solar PV supply chain is in a rather uncomfortable position. There is no manufacturing capacity anymore for polysilicon, for ingots, for wafers. There is still Japanese manufacturers producing cells and modules. But still, Japan is depending on imports, and in particular from China. So how can the situation be improved from there? I think there are 4 priority actions to be taken. First one is to diversify suppliers. And it turns out to be that India has emerged as the 2nd largest module supplier and the 4th largest cell supplier in the world. And the imports from Indian solar PV products have been negligible. In Japan, until now, almost nothing. So I think there is room to partner with India. And how to force solar PV developers to switch from Chinese products to other countries' products. I think Italy is a very good example of what can be done. In the fall of last year, Italy organized an auction for solar PV projects, and it simply banned Chinese products. So it was not possible to bid with Chinese cells, modules, or inverters. And the results of this auction has been very encouraging. The price has increased by only €1 per kilowatt hour compared to an auction that took place in the summer of 2025, during which there was no restriction of origin. Second solution is to subsidize domestic production. This is exactly what the United States is doing, and is doing it with rather success. The United States has managed to revive its ingot and wafer industry thanks to an investment tax credit of 25%. Why not doing it in Japan if we think that manufacturing solar PV in Japan is a strategic priority? Third priority action, aim for recycling. And I think that's what the European Union has been doing. Since 2019, the European Union is targeting that to achieve an 85% recovery rate for solar PV modules. And there may be also opportunities for Japan to cooperate with the EU. in this field. And finally, yes, it will be important to develop new technologies, like my colleague Omi-san talked about perovskite. I think it's important, but I also believe it's insufficient. So I would strongly warn the Japanese government to exclusively focus on the manufacturing of perovskite and give up on crystalline silicon. Crystalline silicon will be the dominating technology for at least the next decade, probably at least the next 2 decades. So in this area too, efforts needs to be pursued. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Carolyn, and I would like to introduce plug-in PV to you. So first of all, let me introduce what is plug-in PV. So plug-in PV are very small solar systems of less than 800 watt. And their specialty is that you can plug them directly into a regular household socket. So the principle is very simple. So you have your solar panels that generate electricity. And the electricity generated by solar panels cannot be directly used in the household. So you need a microinverter that converts the electricity into AC, which is usable electricity, and then you can just plug the system into a household. The thing is, this is very, very common in Germany, where I am from, but in Japan it's currently not recognized under current regulations. So the next slides, please keep this in mind, will be about Germany regulations. Oh, it doesn't work. So one important thing is plug-in PV is mostly for self-consumption. This is a difference to rooftop PV systems, for example. So here you can see a schematic view. So you plug the PV panel directly into the wall socket. And there it feeds the whole household electricity system. So it's not only that you give electricity to one device, but that you give it to the whole household, to every socket. So you, for example, you can use it for lighting, for your air conditioning, for your refrigerator, for whatever. So you can use it within your whole household. But it's only the electricity that is generated at this moment. So if you don't use all of it, if you have excess electricity, it will go into the grid. So the system is connected to the grid, and we will give the electricity generated that is excess free into the grid. So it's not sold. So it's mainly a system used for self-consumption to reduce the electricity bill in the moment of solar cell generation. The biggest advantage of plug-in PV is that its self-installation is possible because you simply plug it in. You don't need an electrician to do the work for you. And you also don't need a permission. You don't need a permit to install plug-in PV, which means it is usable for everybody. So even for people living in apartments, they can use plug-in PV system. So people who don't have access to their own roof, for example, if you're just renting an apartment, you can in Germany install plug-in PV system to reduce your own electricity bill by your own generated solar electricity. So in recent years, you can see this chart starts in 2020. In the last 3 or 4 years, plug-in PV, the number of plug-in PV has greatly increased in Germany. So at the moment, we have more than 1.2 million registered devices. But actually, not all of them are registered. So we have also devices that are not registered. And in total, we have over 4 million devices in Germany currently installed, which is over 2.5 gigawatt of installed capacity that households use to reduce their own electricity bill. But it's not only in Germany. Also internationally, plug-in PV is becoming more and more legalized and standardized. So in 25 out of 27 EU member states, plug-in PV is legal at the moment. And also in America, for example, Utah from last year permits plug-in PV, and other states currently are also changing their regulations to make plug-in PV possible. The biggest advantage of plug-in PV is probably the cost. It's quite cheap. In yen, it's less than 100,000 yen. In euro, it's about 300 to 600 euro. And this price doesn't include only the panels, which are actually quite cheap, but also the microinverter and also the mounting system. So how you attach the system to your balcony, for example, or to your roof is all included in the price. And the payback time of that money is less than 5 years. In many cases, actually, the payback time is around 2 years. So you get your money back really fast. That's one of the reasons why it's become very popular. And if you ask people why they buy this plug-in PV, so this is one of the main reasons, to reduce your electricity bill or to become independent of electricity prices. You know, they have shown a lot of up and down in the recent years. So if you have your own solar system, you are a little bit more independent of electricity prices. And also more than half of the people say that for climate protection, they would like to give a contribution via PV. But also additional merits, like I said, it has very low upfront costs. Then it's a movable system. So if you're living in an apartment and you move your apartment to another city or whatever, you can take plug-in PV with you, as you can take your television with you. It's a normal electric device, so you can take it with you. So it's accessible for everybody. This is the biggest advantage. And people can just try out PV. So from a policy perspective, the main value of plug-in PV is not necessarily only the electricity that is generated, but also that it increases social acceptance of renewables. And because everybody can participate in the energy transition. So you don't need a big electricity company, and you don't need to wait for your country, but you can do it and you can participate by yourself. But when we talk about plug-in PV, one topic that always comes up is safety. But first of all, let me say that there has been no known incidents of any damage caused by plug-in PV. So in Germany, we have very high safety standards. First of all, there are no touchable live parts. Even though it's an electricity generating system, it doesn't matter where you touch it, you don't get electrocuted, you don't get hurt by it. Then you have very high inverter safety standards. The inverter, not only converts electricity, but it's also a safety standard because the inverter monitors the whole system. And as soon as there's any problem, as soon as there's any fault, when there's some irregularity, the inverter shuts down immediately. So the system is safe. But not only the inverter, the whole system, including the mounting system and everything, is standardized. So we have a plug-in device standard that makes sure that also, like I said, the inverter, the mounting system, the cables, the panels, everything is safe. And there has been a practice research project that also concluded that especially systems less than 800 watt are extremely safe and will not cause any damage to humans and also no damage to the environment. And this is my last slide. So how about Japan? Like I said, until now I talked about Germany, but in Japan at the moment, plug-in PV systems are not recognized under current Japanese grid connection regulations. There are several hurdles. One of the biggest hurdles is that current regulations in Japan, they are designed for rooftop PV systems, which means you have to apply for it. You have to register the system. So we need a clear legal classification for these small PV systems in Japan. And then this includes also dedicated safety standards for the whole system, but also especially for microinverters. And other hurdles are maybe practical hurdles. When we talk about multi-family buildings, for example, do we have an outdoor socket where we can plug it in? Or how about construction on the balcony? These kind of hurdles, like practical hurdles, also need to have clear solutions. Or for example, Japanese outlets don't have grounding necessarily. So how do we deal with that situation? But from the international experience and the growing PV in all countries, we can see that these hurdles can be overcome. And I'm actually very hopeful that in Japan, we also in a few years, we will have plug-in PV. Thank you very much.
以上で太陽光発電に関する
That concludes the presentations on solar PV. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much. Please step down from the stage, panelists. Next, we move to session 2, the pathway powered by wind energy. We'd like to invite the speakers up onto the stage. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend the session on the pathway powered by wind energy. My name is Obayashi, Director at REI. We will be also talking about onshore wind as well as offshore wind. In the latter half of the program, offshore wind present status will be discussed. We're restricted with regard to time, and so we'd like to move very quickly. First of all, I'd like to talk about offshore wind. This is the global wind power expansion. That's offshore and onshore together. And last year end, this statistics were compiled, and that is shown. The numbers have not become firm yet and has not gelled. The day before yesterday, GWEC announced so that 150 gigawatts for wind, and Bloomberg announced 160 gigawatts. Wood Mackenzie, 170 gigawatts. That's the wind installed in the full year of last year, and 90% is onshore. And so onshore worldwide is being taking a renewed look, and it is expanding. On the other hand, looking at the world as a whole, if we look at the RE, renewable energy that has been introduced, that's 800 gigawatts. That is what it said in the last full year last year. And so when you think on those terms, 600 gigawatts is due to solar. It was mentioned solar was the superstar. So that is indeed the situation. Solar and wind, there's a gap at the moment, but RE growth continues. There is no end to the growth of RE. And this is offshore wind. With regard to offshore wind, there are no firm and definitive figures. It's between 150 to 170. 10 gigawatts perhaps is about ballpark. Wind Power Monthly 2 days ago came up with this figure. And last year, for the entire year last year, 83 gigawatts. And if you add, you should add 10.7 to that. After last year, that is 2 years ago. To what extent has been the introduction? China's growth accounts for about half. In offshore wind, China is quickly catching up. And if you talk about Japan, offshore wind is the port level offshore wind, 2024, 0.1 gigawatt. This year, and there has been a start of operation. Goto and Hibihinada offshore wind will start operation very soon. And presently, fiscal 25, 500 megawatt of offshore wind installation expected. And there are tender projects which are taking place in public tenders. And so by 2031, they'll be all constructed and in operation. If we look at the worldwide operation, we're seeing an acceleration trend in terms of this energy. And here, this is Japan's offshore wind and the designated area status. If you look at this, presently 12 promotion areas have been designated. First and second, third tenders have been conducted. And as you know, last year, the first round comprised 3 projects. With regard to these projects, there have been withdrawals, and so there'll be a retender this year. And round 4 will start, and this is the number 11 and number 12 in the promotion designated areas. It's not clear when during this year this will happen. And as to the promising areas, different developments are underway. But there are preparatory areas, and these are promising, and for these to become promising areas, it'll take some time. This is round 1, round 2, and round 3, the present status. And as mentioned earlier, there are 3 rounds, 3 projects in round 1. And concerning these, this year there'll be a retender process. Last year, what happened with regard to offshore? There are lots of things that happened, so we have not covered everything here. In 2025, in June, what could not be passed 2024? The revision of the Renewable Energy Sea Area Use Law was passed, and the name was changed. Maritime Renewable Energy Development Act, that is what we call it, and that has been renamed. And so this law came to pass. EEZ, offshore wind development has been widened. And also in June of 2025, the Ship Act Enforcement Act, the cabotage, foreign flagged ships and the use of this, they can be registered in Japan and it can be used in Japan. And partially there has been a improvement in transparency with regard to the law and enforcement thereof. It's a very strong policy. So part of this becoming transparent is a major step indeed. And in August of 2025, in 2020, the first offshore wind industry vision was formulated, and the second vision, especially with regard to floating type offshore wind, vision has been made public. The target is to form 15 gigawatts of new projects by 2040, and floating type of 15 floating type for the floating type 15 gigawatts is an ambitious goal indeed, even by world standards. In end of August, very unfortunately, what was conducted in 21, round one of tenders, withdrew from 1.7 gigawatts in the three sea areas. So this is a major withdrawal, and it's very unfortunate. 1.7 gigawatts, however, it's not that this will not be developed. Already, various tilling of land is taking place, and the regions, some of the regions prefer to have their regions developed. And so when the retender occurs, we feel that things will progress very quickly. And so with this as a trigger, the way tenders ought to be will be reviewed. From June to December, operators will be interviewed, and the government will review the tender system. And public comment has started on the 22nd of January this year, and we hope that this will promote business operations. And I'm sorry, this is a busy slide. A year ago, I announced something, and I've added some things to what I announced last year. The blue part is what I added, and I believe this can be used as is, but there have been new developments. So I have added new points to this. A marked rise in prices have occurred. Offshore wind is still such that in Japan, tenders are still inefficient, and the government is conducting interviews to examine and reconsider the system. And along with this, overseas last year, offshore wind did not make much headway, but this year, in January, quite recently, in UK, 8.4 gigawatts of tender was announced, and the bid was made and finalized. So worldwide, the ship and supply chain will be tight, and with regard to transmission lines in Japan, we are ill-prepared, so we need to accelerate. And furthermore, 2022 and 23 and 2024, zero premium bidding took place, and this gave rise to some severe circumstances, but the tender system is being reviewed, so the zero premium bidding will be reviewed. On the market, the seller and seller and buyer, and the price gap is widening. So the situation continues to be difficult. So with regard to offshore wind, I'd like to conclude my remarks. And so I'd like to hand over the floor to Mr. Saito to talk about onshore wind.
Thank you. As has been introduced, my name is Saito from REI. So let me talk about onshore wind power situation. For the onshore wind, At the end of 2024, 5.8 gigawatts, of which offshore wind was 0.25 gigawatts. And you can see the chart at the bottom on a single year basis increase. For wind power, the more than 20 years in life in existence, some of them have already been abolished and dismantled. So you can see that all in all, there has been increase of 0.66 gigawatt. Now, as for the goal for the year 2040, you can see 4.4% to 8%. And if you see the breakdown of the onshore and offshore, as the chart on the right-hand side indicates, 4 research institutes have made the public on a gigawatt-hour at the basis. And what is not being made public, the estimates are being given. So, as you can see, the onshore, the remainder will be the onshore. Let's just say 20 to 40 gigawatts need to be introduced. Right now, it is 6 gigawatts at the moment. So 1 to 2 gigawatts per year. As we move toward the year 2040, we need to further install newly for the onshore. Now, do we see such sightings available in Japan? It is often said that for onshore wind, there is no more location available. And this is from the Ministry of Environment 4 years ago. And 5.5 meters wind velocity. And on the right-hand side, you can see the exclusions like public parks and protected areas are being excluded. And for agricultural land, rice paddies are excluded. And 6.5 meters or more in wind velocity. In terms of capacity utilization, it is about 28% to 29%. It could increase by 10% or so, or decrease by 10%. But on the other hand, for lower bottom, it is mostly Hokkaido and Tohoku areas. So 60 gigawatts to be located in Hokkaido, but wind blows differently, so you need to have on a nationwide basis sighting. And if the standard, the wind velocity, could be made lower, then the possibility could expand. But if we do have such a lot of wind farms being elected, too many wind farms people may criticize. But there are intervals between the windmills. So 300 gigawatts, if the potential is to be achieved, it would mean 8% of the total land area of Japan. But because of the interval of the land, it will be around 2 percentage points to be actually utilized in terms of land utilization. So even with the wind velocity to be made higher, if the 20% is the target, then less than 1% of the total land area could be developed. The right-hand side map is Japan, but the photograph in the middle, if you could enlarge by Google Map, you can see the windmills. So these are the only areas where the windmills are actually being erected. Now, nextly, for wind power as well as solar power and so forth, let me explain about the protection forests. In the case of the wind power, about 2/3 of the total land area of Japan are forests, and of which 1/3 is the protection forests. And you can see the different categories of such forests on the right-hand side table. But it could be converted to other purposes. According to Forestry Agency, you can see Class 1 and Class 2 lands. For Class 1 lands, you cannot convert. But for Class 2, you could convert with making applications to the government. But then the definition of Class 1, it must be a slanting of 25 degrees or more. So the remainder would be very limited area, and the GIS data is not made publicly available. Now, then what would be the methodology to make the application? You can see the portal of the website for the Forestry Agency. But if you start the process for making application, it may take more than 5 years. And unless the business operators are making waste of their money, maybe it could be made more efficient. For agricultural land, it is even more difficult to convert into the wind farm. But still, there is potential. So we need to speed up the process. The environmental assessment report to be expedited and having agreement with the local community, and you will be able to shorten the time needed. But the important is, of course, that there are the national government environmental impact assessment as well as ordinance-based environmental impact assessment, and the ordinance-based process may take even longer than the national process. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Saito. We'd like to discuss onshore wind later on again. Offshore wind is being expanded in the world, and there have been different events occurring. Tanaka-san, last year's global offshore wind market, what was a turning point, and what are the prospects for this year? Thank you very much. What you are seeing now is an excerpt, this is not comprehensive of all the events related to offshore wind in the world. As Ms. Obayashi has mentioned, Director Obayashi has mentioned earlier, 8 gigawatts, 2024, 8 gigawatts has been included. And there have been good things that happened. The systems have been further developed. 1.7 gigawatts of withdrawal also took place worldwide. There have been both positive and negative developments. Offshore wind is expected to grow more than Japan in Vietnam from 2030 to 25. 6 to 17 gigawatts of introduction targets have been announced. And this is the first step of the development of the system and framework. And in the United States, as I mentioned earlier, there have been different changes which have taken place. For example, what has already been decided, projects that have been decided has been suspended due to policy, and some have been fought against in court. And Empire Wind was permitted to reopen after court ruling. And where offshore wind was born in Europe, if we turn our eyes to Europe, Netherlands and Germany had very ambitious targets, but there is a slowdown in growth. And they're reviewing targets as well. In Denmark in 2024, 2 years ago, they did a zero premium auction, and the auction reopened for the zero bid 2024 auction. And last year in December, the announcement was made for the auction, and the CFD was reintroduced. Government support has been reintroduced. And also on this side, if we look at the Asia Pacific, Taiwan is a bit more advanced than Japan. 640 megawatts and 920 megawatts will be in operation. In China, 26 megawatt turbine demonstration has been started, and the largest point is this year in the UK, 8.4 gigawatts. Auction has been successfully awarded in the UK. So this is positive news. Thank you.
There are backlashes from time to time, but still, with the United Kingdom taking the leadership, offshore wind is progressing. And with Denmark changing its the system, the design, there are a lot of promising expectations going forward, and I'm sure this would influence Japan as well. And we have Mr. Nakamura, who is responsible for fisheries the policies at the REI, and she has created this guidebook, and already 2,000 copies of this handbook has been distributed. So centering on this, may I ask Ms. Nakamura, first of all, because EEZ Act has been newly established last year, and what would be the smooth way forward? What may be the policies needed in Japan? I'm sure you are engaged in the study right now.
Thank you very much. I'm a researcher. My name is Nakamura. I'd like to talk about the revisions, specific revisions, and how governments should be tackling this change. And what is shown here is offshore wind, and this is a summary, a conceptual framework of related domains in the offshore wind power sector. What was changed last year? That's the part shown in red. Up until now, on the left-hand side, where it's not in red, development took place in territorial waters. In the red portion, development will be expanded. In terms of area, there is a large expansion, and offshore wind will advance going forward. It's a change in law which gives us high expectations, and that's the change is related to renewable energy, marine renewable energy development law, and there needs to be a change in adjustment with a different perspective. If you could look at the brochure for details, for example, in EEZ, if you want to proceed with development in territorial waters, fixed bottom was the mainstay. In EEZ, floating type is very much under focus from fisheries standpoint. The permission fishing comes into view. And fisheries products such as tuna will be looked at differently, and large scale, and where it's difficult to designate specify interests, there'll be some difficulty. And also landscape and also defense information mostly closed. So cross-sectoral zoning will be necessary, which covers all of the ministries. And within the strategic law, there have been attempts to enact maritime law, whether it's the oceans. It's shown what's happening on the maps, but it's not just now. It's about the future. How will we make use of the oceans going forward? We need to be future-oriented in our outlook. And as the public entities need to talk to different sectors. And when I talk to those in different sectors, there have been figures to 2040, what and how many gigawatts, the numbers have come out. But people are interested in where. From the numbers, we hope that there'll be more specific information on where in the surface this will be taking place. I hope this kind of information will be shared. That is all for me.
Thank you very much. So, the stakeholders are totally different if you compare territorial waters and EEZ. But it is EEZ, it will be major fishery operators, or those who are involved in the big scale the marine projects and industries. And the Ministry of Environment will be preparing newly. And Harada-san, I think you will be able to introduce. Yes, this is Sando from the RAI. For the offshore wind, as you may know very well, we have the tendering system, and you have the port and harbor law, related issues and so forth. But as Nakamura-san has already explained to you, for the offshore wind to be developed further in Japan, what would be the scale and where to be developed? You need to have a certain good outlook and vision. The suppliers, as well as the fisheries, as well as the EPC operators, unless there is a vision and outlook given by the authorities, investment will not be easily done, which means that the cost will not come down, so there will be a vicious cycle. And for the fishermen as well, in the sea where they operate, in what scale offshore wind farms could be built, there are a lot of uncertainties and anxieties being seen among the fishermen. So coordination needs to be done amongst the different stakeholders. And unless you can remove the anxiety of the different businesses, projects will not move forward. But for the fishermen, they are very anxious. What may be the scale of the wind farm and where the location may be? And for business operators, they're also being very anxious. So the government needs to indicate which promotion zones they are intending to actually introduce the wind farms. And on the left-hand side, you can see a brochure which was published in June last year for the fishermen. This is the introduction to offshore wind power. And they need to understand what is the system. And this handbook has been drafted so that it will be easily understood by the ordinary fishermen. On the right-hand side, you can see the recommendation to be published in the near future. And the main point of the recommendation is that for the zoning of the maritime area, the METI as well as MLIT and the Ministry of Environment, they have been coordinating with the different stakeholders. But the salient point is looking at the process even before this one. They have a preliminary process where the existing data would be utilized so that as much as possible at the earlier stage, they will make visible where the locations are being studied as candidate zones for developing offshore wind. And that would make clearer and more transparent the process for site selection.
Thank you very much. We look forward to the publication of the report. So Kimura-san, last year in the fall, at REI, we put forth a report on the ports and offshore wind. And Kimura-san, you were central in this process. The government is studying this matter as regards how it ought to be. And the second meeting has just taken place recently. So the government is examining some issues. What kind of proposals in relation to our reports? To what extent are there overlaps? And what is conceivable to move forward even further? Thank you very much. My name is Kimura from REI. When it comes to offshore wind, the key is ports, and we put forth a proposal regarding this coexistence with fishing and developments around the world, and different challenges have been studied. Ports. When you think of ports, you may think this is a niche issue. Some may feel it's a minor issue when we talk about ports. But base ports are very important. And in Europe, and also overseas where they construct offshore wind, they accumulate a collect industry. So they try to drive collection of industries which would use offshore wind. And so that is the base port at the REI. At the very bottom, I wrote the purpose. Offshore wind, an introduction thereof. This is the main infrastructure. This is how we thought. And so when you think of Japan as a whole, what should be the strategy? Ms. Obayashi talked about the floating 15 gigawatts to be realized. That target was announced last fiscal year. And so based on this, for offshore wind to promote that, the base supports are very important. As to what we did did interviews, and we have sorted out the different challenges, and we have put this together. So as to what we actually said, I'm sorry, the print is very small. Very broadly, there are 4 pillars to our proposal. And in terms of term, the medium to long term, and also the immediate future has been examined and sorted. For example, recommendation 1, that is in going ahead with the floating, the Akita, Noshiro, Sakata, Niigata, Kita, Kyushu, Kashima, these base ports. There are different base ports. We have to maximize the use to make the transition to the floating type. And also interport collaborations. I understand MLIT is examining this issue. Multiple ports collaborating and to use ports where the ports are collaborating. And that is this proposal. And among floating, there's a semi-submerged, and there's the spar type. In Nagasaki, Goto, the spar type is being realized. The way it's made is different. In Europe, what kind of infrastructure is necessary is a point which they are discussing. In Japan, we have now this ambitious goal. So what method do we employ to realize this? And we want to come up with methods that can resolve immediate issues. And these are the recommendations that we came out, JWPA and the fisheries associations will be involved in various discussions, I understand. And when it comes to base ports of offshore wind, that's the key. And Japanese offshore wind industry to be strengthened, I believe, will be very important also in terms of energy security for Japan. That is on our minds. Thank you very much, Mr. Kimura.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being very punctual. So for the 40-minute session, we have 9 minutes left, and I would like to ask questions to the panelists. For Saito-san, you've discussed onshore wind. For the onshore wind, the power, as was mentioned during the solar power session, during the first session, the environmental impact assessment as well as local community involvement, there are many challenges. So how can you overcome the different challenges and ask for understanding of the local community in the case of onshore wind? For onshore wind, as solar power has been discussed, initially there has been a lot of opposition coming from the local community. The reasons are the same. There has been improper operators who have come into the private-owned lands, and they were too noisy, and they did not lend their ears to any criticism. So there are low-frequency noises which are still problematic. Medically, they say that it is not troublesome, but it took 5 to 10 years to gain understanding of the local community. So we gave the information beforehand, the medical, from medical perspective, and we invited them over closer to windmill to listen to the noise. So right now there is not that many criticism, but some people still voice their concerns over low-frequency noises, but you need to be steadfast. And it took us about 10 years, but you need to continue these efforts and never to repeat any mishappenings. So you need to start from the beginning to give the explanation. So in the case of offshore the wind, we are making proposals that we need to start from the public acceptance point of view. In Japan, it started from port harbors. It was not that large scale. And for port and harbors, it's much closer. But the offshore wind, compared to the overseas countries, it is more near shore in the case of Japan. So what would be the landscape impact? And apart from the fishermen, there are a lot of things to be explained to the public. So I have questions to the other panelists.
I believe we'll ask you to speak 1 minute each, starting with Saito-san. Whether it's onshore or offshore, the largest challenge, what must be overcome to realize onshore and offshore? Could we start with Saito-san, please? Having the understanding of the community and residents. What was not taken up was the interconnection issue. When it comes to offshore, it's a large scale, so there's an interregional interconnection, and there may be regional interconnection. And when I participated in the committee meeting, there's no firm, so you can tie as many wind facilities as possible because of curtailment. There are some people who say that. At the planning stage, the transmission stage, you need to coordinate on both stages in going forward. I agree completely.
So Tanaka-san, yes, thank you. It is true overseas, but also in Japan, cost is rising. The supply chain is not that mature in Japan. That is also a challenge. Now, what is happening in the world? The risks involved in terms of cost, not to ask the operators to bear all the cost burden, but the government and the operators need to share the burden. It is also discussed in Japan how to go about. Perhaps laws need to be revised. And when the public tendering system is to be changed, we need to introduce what are the experience in the other countries.
Thank you. Nakamura-san, please. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, one-stop type cross-sectoral zoning is necessary at an early stage. I think because we are in such times, so this is all very necessary. Regardless of whether it's central government or regional, whether it comes to environmental plans or zoning, I believe this is necessary. And also what we should not forget is that presently, why are we promoting offshore wind? The regions and the fishermen are have intensely discussed, and the operators have engaged in gaining agreement. And so I believe we should like to continue a detailed approach, and I believe there'll be revisions to the central method, and so we'd like to focus on this issue as well.
Thank you. Yes. What I think to be the issues would be the local governments, the municipalities, as you may know, the offshore wind, the prefectural governments, as well as municipalities. In order to promote offshore wind, a lot of energy and investment needs to be made. And the promotion zones have been well developed in certain communities. And there has been a lot of good support coming from the municipalities. But even so, when things get bigger, the local governments, the people in charge could be transferred to the different places. And you need to have local governments come together to be able to communicate with each other, to share the experiences that will be necessary going forward.
私は田中
Thank you very much, Kimura-san. My view is the same as that of Tanaka-san, as you are well aware. Last year, there have been operators that withdrew. In the inflationary environment, the situation is tough. I talked about this when I talked about ports. MLIT is very enthusiastically thinking about how to reduce costs. And METI is also thinking about this as well. So the industry as a whole and the infrastructure which supports this to widen the site and to develop with scale and to reduce the cost. And the supply chain also has to reduce cost. Various things have to be attempted to reduce cost, and that must be done. The industry as a whole should unite toward this end, and that will be called for even more toward the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I fully agree with Kimura-san and Santo-san that the cost factor seems to be the big challenge for the offshore wind. Between offshore or as well as onshore wind, there are certain similar issues like the curtailment as well as interconnection. But for the onshore wind supply chain, is not that well established in Japan yet. So these are the issues that we need to consider going forward. In the year 2026, the cost and supply chain, these two are the big challenges. But one thing I would like to mention is international competition and also international collaboration are necessary. The case of Taiwan has been mentioned. The Taiwan is going ahead, especially in Asia, and also the weather and climate situation may be different, but we need to collaborate as well. So this is the end of the wind power session. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
ございました。
Thank you very much to the panelists. Please step down from the stage. We'd like to take a 10-minute break at this juncture, and the next session will start at 16:10. We have a brief announcement to all of the participants. There are those who will be coming after the break, so we ask that you take your belongings or that you put your belongings not in the seat next to you, but on your lap or on your seats. We're conducting a survey for today's seminar. You can access the questionnaire via the QR codes displayed on the screen and at the entrance. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. If you would prefer a hard copy of the questionnaire, please ask at the registration desk. As for the future events, on the 30th of January, we'll be doing a symposium, solar sharing values, on solar sharing values. We are registering those who want to participate. And March 12th, Revision 2026, Future Prospects and the Miracle, which has happened for over the past 15 years. Please register for these events at REI starting last year in June. We've started a podcast distribution. Renewable Energy Q&A is the title of the program. Mapping Our Future Together is the title. Spotify, it's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Please do have a listen.
それではお時間となりました。
We would like to resume, as it is time, Session 3. Decarbonization progress in steel, cement, and buildings. The moderator for this session is Ms. Yuko Nishida, a senior manager at the Renewable Energy Institute. Ms. Nishida, please take the floor.
気候変動グループの西
Thank you. My name is Nishida from Climate Change Group at the REI. Climate Change Group covers indeed wide-ranging area. And at the moment, we are looking at the decarbonization of the heavy industries. And as a foundation, hydrogen matters a lot. And also, we are focusing on the building sector decarbonization. So we have people from different fields today in the panel. So Ishihara-san, may I start with you? Decarbonizing the heavy industry. Hydrogen is a foundational technology going forward. So if you could start with that. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ishihara. So heavy industries as well as heat sector decarbonization. Hydrogen matters a lot. So let me explain to you the present situation. 99% of the hydrogen being produced are actually using fossil fuel. So it is gray hydrogen. So a lot of CO2 is being emitted. So blue hydrogen, gray hydrogen. Only about 1% in Japan for what may be called low carbon hydrogen. But as we move towards 2030, we need to decarbonize even more. So there are many programs being announced for producing low carbon hydrogen. And you can see the blue carbon as well as the green carbon. The green for green and the blue for blue. But it is a small number which have reached the FID, final investment decision stage. So can we really achieve the target in the year 2030? There are a lot of concerns, not only in Japan, but also in Europe and elsewhere. For the industrial use as well as petroleum refining, it will be methanol as well as ammonia production. Those would be prioritized. And as you can see on the chart at the right-hand side, in the year 2024, the usage of hydrogen for oil refining and industrial use constitute almost 98%. It is the same in Japan as well. So there may be shortage going forward for hydrogen. But in Japan, we are mostly focusing on imported hydrogen. So large volume to be imported using ships. But in order to have efficiency, we need to liquefy or being converted into ammonia or other chemicals. But conversion as well as transportation, both are expensive. And as you can see on the right-hand side, the bottom, even with cheaper hydrogen being purchased overseas, for conversion as well as transportation costs will be incremental. So it will be about threefold the price compared to the export the country. And there could be shortage, and it will be quite expensive. So the usage and the volume, we need to be very selective going forward. And another point is, unfortunately, there is a concern. For producing hydrogen, CO2 will be emitted. So the volume of CO2 emissions, there are standards being set. And they have a definition of what is low carbon hydrogen. And in Japan, up until the production of hydrogen, the CO2 emissions are being counted until then. But in the past 2 years, looking at the international standards, especially in Europe, they are looking at life cycle process as a whole, the conversion as well as the transportation and usage. Everything need to be counted in as a burden on the environment. So for Japan, which will be mainly importing from overseas, it is very expensive, and the carbon emission will be at a very high level. So using hydrogen will not be advantage for Japan. So having said so, in the whole world, hydrogen procurement may become increasingly difficult for Japan. So we need to be selective. So for hydrogen, that is necessary for ammonia production as well as oil refining. Those would be given priority. And the cost level is about threefold in Japan as compared to the other countries. And with the higher level of carbon emission, meaning that it is highly inefficient. And for the electric vehicles and power generation, there are a lot of concerns of hydrogen have been used. So you need to be selective in Japan in terms of usage as well as the volume. And even with imported hydrogen, with the incremental costs to be involved, you need to, as much as possible, minimize the carbon emission. So even if Japan is to be dependent upon import, we need to import mostly green hydrogen from abroad. And for example, for steel, DRI steel will be produced abroad, and the final product of steel will be imported into Japan. That will be more preferable for Japan. So taking into consideration all of these, what we need to think about is domestic green hydrogen. We are looking at the electrolyzer as well as the exchange rate. It used to be 100 yen to $1 when the hydrogen strategy was formulated, but right now it is 158 yen to $1. So it's more expensive. So the hurdle is higher. So that is the present state for the hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The REI has reported on hydrogen, and with regard to excessive expectations and illusions, how could we be more realistic in terms of the use of hydrogen in the industry? Decarbonization is said to be most difficult for steel and cement. So we have two speakers, Goto-san and Katagi-san, who will speak on both cement and steel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Goto. I specialize on steel. Why should we speak about steel? The key to decarbonization has been mentioned frequently in the other panel sessions. Steel is also very important, have the maximum carbon emission, and energy consumption is also very large. So looking at the global emission, 9% to 10% comes from steel. And in terms of greenhouse gas emissions in Japan, 12%. The half of the industry emission comes from steel sector. But looking at the future, steel need to be continued to be utilized, be it the solar power, or be it the wind power, or electric vehicles, or semiconductors. Steel is something essential and fundamental. So without decarbonizing steel, I don't think net zero in 2050 can happen. Now, mostly last year, there has been developments for steel in Europe. This year, from the 1st of January, the CBAM has been introduced and implemented. And the Clean Industry Deal, which was announced last year, as part of that, the rules for green steel are now being set. And the LESS, Low Emission Steel Standard especially, there are a growing number of companies becoming members of the LESS. In the United States, IRA has been paused. But looking at state-by-state, low-carbon steel standards in public procurement has been introduced. Steel industry in the United States are mostly electric arc furnace, but it will be primary steel as compared to the blast furnace. Electric arc furnace has less emission. So decarbonization potential for electric arc furnace needs to be, or perhaps will be, large in potential. So looking at supply chain as a whole, the decarbonization target is still being maintained for corporations. So this is something of a very pleasant news. Last year, Microsoft, for the data centers, near zero emission steel has been procured from Stegra in Sweden. This is an off-stake agreement, and Stegra has the hydrogen DRI, hydrogen-based DRI. Started from this year, and this new technology will be the basis for the steel industry as a whole globally. Now, when we speak of steel, we need to mention China. China has the largest production of steel in the world. About half of the steel comes from China. And the government of China are introducing huge amount of subsidies into the steel industry. So there has been a lot of conversions. The blast furnace are being replaced. The highly inefficient furnaces are being replaced to new electric arc furnace as well as DRI. And that ETS now includes the steel sector. So they are now trying to respond to CBAM. Now, for the DRI is already been implemented by Bao Steel. There has been 3 issues and 3 main pathways to decarbonize. To continue to utilize the existing facilities, but they would go for energy efficiency and optimization, introducing hydrogen or attaching CCS to offset the carbon. But it means that coal will continue to be used, so the emission will continue, meaning that net zero cannot be achieved. The second pathway is to go for electric arc furnace and also for recycling. So to utilize steel scraps. The third pathway is the DRI, the direct reduced iron, which will be more feasible in terms of net zero technology. Steel scraps alone will not be enough because there will be increased demand for iron steel. So primary steel will continue to be necessary. And you need to have a direct reduction process to be introduced. Now, there will be a lot of electric arc furnaces as well as hydrogen-based DRI to be introduced. So we will go for decarbonized steel and decarbonized hydrogen. And if these steel could be provided at a lower cost, which will contribute greatly as the climate change, the countermeasures. We need a lot of available hydrogen. And the steel industry is a huge user. So demand response as well as PPAs should be utilized. And lastly, steel products are at a low carbon level. Just by producing such low carbon steel cannot sell automatically because the cost may be higher. Then for low carbon steel products, we need to create the market for them. You need to have evaluation framework and labeling schemes to be introduced. So the users need to play a larger role. What would be the criteria for selecting the low carbon products by users? Traceability to be made transparent. That is one thing that we need to see. And we need to have policy alignment. And we see policy levers, not just labeling systems, but having LCA systems and standards to be established for public procurement. And that these also would contribute in increasing the demand. Thank you.
Katagiri-san on cement, please, concrete. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Katagiri from REI. I'd like to talk about decarbonization in the cement industry and what will be the key to achieving this. First, on cement, Cement is such that sand and gravel and the water are mixed, and this is used as concrete. That is the case for the most part. Concrete, up until now, has been used for over 100 years, and it has been a material of choice for the society. It's a fundamental material. On the left-hand side, you see a photograph of what is taken on the construction site, and concrete is being used here. It continues to be used, and going forward, to improve infrastructure, and it's necessary for infrastructure going forward, and future demand is expected. And on the right-hand side, Japan's cement production and domestic demand is shown here. In Japan, with economic growth in the 90s, production reached 100 million tons approximately, and then after that, with the society maturing, there has been a declining trend. As for domestic demand, recently, 35 million is the level we are seeing recently. The cement industry is such that the global cement industry emits 6.2% of global emissions, and domestically, earlier there was mention of steel. After following steel and chemical, cement is the third in terms of emitting, and there has been a stronger demand for improvements. And this is the profile of the cement industry. The cement industry is such that cement is manufactured and supplied, but not only that, the raw materials or for fuels, diverse byproducts can be used. On the left-hand side, with the cement factory at the center, the resource circulation system is shown using a chart. The green portion is blast furnaces slug or coal ash, or what has been generated on a construction site. The waste is used as raw material for cement, and that is possible. On what is indicated in orange is used tires or waste oils. What can be burned to generate heat can be used. It's used as alternative fuel. In terms of number, cement can be produced in very massive amounts, and byproducts and wastes can be processed in large amounts. Per 1 ton of cement, 480 kilograms of wastes and byproducts can be used. On the right-hand side, this shows CO2 emissions by the cement industry in Japan, and the trends are shown. The vertical axis is CO2 emissions, the volume, and on the right-hand side we have taken the years, and it looks from the side if it's there's a reduction. But the production volume has been reduced, and that's a major factor, a dominating factor for this trend. With the resource circularity, fuel and raw material substitution is taking place to reduce. But it's not only the resource circularity which contributes to CO2 reduction. And that is what I wanted to comment on. This is the cement production process shown using a schematic. A reduction is not easy. That is what I want to explain here. In terms of process, there's the raw material process. Various raw materials are pulverized. And then there is the burning process. the pulverized material is burned at 450 degrees, and clinker is manufactured as a result of this. And in this process, burning fuel, mostly coal is used, and partly waste is used. With the burning, there is a CO2 generated, and major material uses limestone, and that is decarbonated, emitting CO2. So these are the areas in which mainly CO2 is generated. And with regard to the selected clinker, in the finalized process, gypsum is added, and it's pulverized once again to come up with the final product of cement. The CO2 emission breakdown is shown on the graph on the right-hand side. As mentioned earlier, for 40% for burning process, and the main material, raw materials derived is 40%, fuel derived is 40%. So even if the fuel is such that all fossil fuels are removed, generation of CO2 cannot be eliminated all completely. So that's why elimination of CO2 emission is very difficult in the cement industry. Having said that, worldwide, looking at the cement industries of the world, toward the decarbonization, various measures are being studied and examined and being implemented, and that is the situation. On the right-hand side, we have a diagram which shows technological reduction methods plotted against time and also against the CO2 source. If you look at the top portion, the blue line, that's a savings in clinker usage, a reduction in clinker usage. This is such that it is very effective. Very simply put, reducing clinker in the cement would render the cement as a whole low C, low carbon. In the world, worldwide, a blended cement is being used. And this is there's expanded use of this, and this is being advanced. On the right-hand side, this is trends in cement production in Japan by type. If you look at the top of the bar graph, that's OPC. That's mostly clinker and cement. And at the bottom, that's low C, promoting blended cement. The Japanese cement industry uses very little blended cement, and that continues to be the case. In Japan, of course, blended cement can be produced. We do have the technology, but just because there's technology does not mean that it is used, and that is a major challenge for the Japanese cement industry. And this is the last slide. So then with the low C products, which is represented by blended cement, to promote this, what is necessary? And what is necessary for this to become the material of choice going forward? For blended cement to be chosen and to be used, we need to create the system and the mechanism, and that would be key. And I've raised 3 points. First, EPD and LCA, using this to make visible the carbon emission. And secondly, labeling and ratings for the low carbon products so that we can compare to ensure comparability. And thirdly, creating economic value, how to ensure that this happens. It may be in the procurement area, it may be the institutions and systems, and it may be support. low C products, blended cement. For this to become the material of choice is important through these steps. And that is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From steel, cement, and towards the end, even though many measures are taken, the key is held by the users. What actions to be taken? So from the construction company, which is a big user, if you could please give us your presentation. Yes, this is Okada.
On construction LCA, can that change the supply chain? And Goto-san and Katagiri-san have mentioned the fact that the users and the supply chain both need to work to head toward low C. Construction LCA starting in 2028 will be applied to buildings with a floor area of over 5,000 square meters, or studies are being made toward this end. And that's from extraction to construction to disposal. It's CO2 calculation throughout this entire process from extraction, transport to disposal. From the 2028, consideration is being made regarding whether it will be mandatory to calculate for buildings with a floor space of over 5,000 square meters. This is the MLIT roadmap, and one step would be to start in 2028, and in the second step would be taken to expand the scope and to expand the use, and the third step would be 2040s, where there'll be a tightening of reduction measures. And this is what they are discussing. If we turn our eyes overseas, on the left-hand side, that's the EU roadmap and Nordic roadmap. The light blue, that's the LCA calculation has been started on a experimental basis, and the green shows the upper limit, reducing the cap. And specific roadmaps have been presented on the right-hand side. That's State of California upfront carbon upper limit, which is updated every 3 years. That has been announced, and to the supply chain, it will become a material for making investment decisions. And when talking about building for projects, there's the business plan, the programming, design, and construction phase, and the initial type of start of the project is a concept of schematic. Decision-making influence is high, and the cost of changes is low. And the latter phase of the building is detailed design to construction. At this stage, the cost of change rises very sharply. That is the tendency. And here shows the LCA construction for steel and cement buildings. From extraction of material and to use in buildings. This shows the carbon emission. The boldness of the line just shows the largeness of carbon emission. The orange part is very bold, is very thick. And that is structural steel, and then there is cement and concrete. They account for a large part of this. And the structural materials are such that the initial stage of planning or design, it's easy to change. But in the latter phase of the construction, changes are impossible. So to make the change at the early stage of design, people need to consider. And in terms of information, using low C material, you need information of this nature. So EPD, that is the Environmental Product Declaration. Buildings are such that a lot of construction material is used, and you need a lot of EPD. And we're talking about the present now, and it will start in 2028. The present status is such that domestically, for LCA calculation, there is not sufficient EPD. And this shows the increase of EPD in the EU on the right-hand side. And 2025, up until 2025 January, from 2020 there has been a steep increase, and that is because of policies and subsidies, and domestically, especially SMEs, EPD continuous support, I think, will be necessary. And last slide. This is digitalizing tools. DX is going to be very important. On the left-hand side, it shows the EC3, the cloud-based EPD database used in the United States. And what this shows is concrete. Carbon emissions of concrete, and a comparison, the regions and the construction site, the region, and if you designate the construction material, the carbon emissions of manufacturers that are available in the region is shown. And there's what's called the BIM. It's designed using 3D, and when you design, what's important is that the construction material volume can be output. The LCA calculation is construction material emissions and the volume of construction material. And on the design tool, EPD data can be linked. And in Europe and the United States, this is used broadly. What is important is that the LCA, after it's not the LCA decided when after the designing stage. At the previous stage, at the designing stage, the decision has to be made with regard to LCA, and to use low C construction material is very important for Japan, and so we believe that the situation needs to be changed.
Thank you very much. So, very broadly, steel, cement, hydrogen, as well as construction sector. So, what may be the connection, especially when we make research into hydrogen? How can we concentrate where it is truly needed in a small quantity? And that is important, and we emphasize this repeatedly. And steel industry is where there will be strong necessity for using hydrogen. But more recently, the DRI using hydrogen, or how the hydrogen being used in steel industry. Mr. Goto, would you like to share with us? For hydrogen in the 2020s, we now see a boom because everyone is trying to encourage the usage of hydrogen. But even having said so, when we look at Europe, there are many hydrogen projects being introduced, but those projects who have survived does have a lot of subsidies from the government, and it does also have economic viable business case. So we need to be wise and smart in using hydrogen. And hydrogen has a lot of affinity with steel industry. For the offtake of hydrogen, we need to have stable demand seen in the market. And when it comes to steel industry, it is more concentrated, so we can concentrate into just one location. If it is more widely dispersed, it will be not that efficient. So a lot of hurdles to be overcome. But for DRI, steel products, as I have mentioned in my own presentation, the Swedish project is quite efficient, and this is a wonderful project. It is highly successful, although the production has not been started yet. Perhaps this year or early next year, production will actually start. And why Sweden was successful in bringing in the project? Because the renewables have high proportion in the grid system, and electrolyzers are very efficient. And can I continue? In Japan, what may happen here? Hydrogen is still very expensive. So when we look at the projection outlook, we need to bring in hydrogen from the other countries through the DRI, the steel the projects. And the CFI has been started last year. The blue hydrogen eventually should be turned into green hydrogen, or products which has utilized hydrogen could be imported, not just hydrogen, but where hydrogen is abundantly available and to be utilized to be made into products. And the products, final products to be introduced into Japan could be one possibility. But as Mr. Ishihara has suggested earlier, domestic production of hydrogen, there could be some possibility there. Yes, that is true. The security matters increasingly in the international trade arena. So one option will be import. Another option is domestic production. And to have domestically produced DRI based on hydrogen would be important in terms of national security. And as solar power and wind power expands in adoption in the 2040s and 2050s, the steel production in Japan can also utilize all these different options.
少しだけ
Ishihara-san, in Japan, if we are going to try a domestic produced hydrogen, what would be the challenge? Naturally, there would be merits, but what are the challenges to doing that? In terms of challenges, above all, the cost is the issue. The cost is high to start with, so maybe people didn't even think about it, but in view of the present situation, there are challenges in terms of cost, but there is now a potential, a possibility. Water analyzer water electrolyzers are such that depending on the country, you need to design the electrolyzer to suit the country. So it won't be the case of solar panels. It won't be like the solar panels. Renewable energy power is such that in Japan, 2030 targets, if that can be achieved, cost will be competitive. On a dollar basis, the yen is weak now, so the cost is rising, but domestic competitiveness is rising. The other issue is renewable energy volume. To secure the volume, we are still seeing a shortfall in terms of electricity. Can we use that for the production of hydrogen where there's a shortfall? Renewable energy power and electricity is such that we need to expand this as much as possible, even if the extent is very small.
One more point. Okada-san, towards the end, you have shown us a slide. So could you once again put up that slide on the screen? Very important point that from users' point of view, how to transform the industry supply chain. And already in Europe or United States, the architects are already making these choices. So which manufacturers, which cement, and which steel material products will be good for decarbonization? These are considered in the cost calculation. Now, whether Japan is already doing this or not, the architects have not yet digitalized this far. And for cement and steel and concrete, the producers, their EPDs are not that great. So there are many things to be done from the user's side as well as producers' side. So for the user side as well as supplier side, how to support both of them and try to accelerate decarbonization. The direction is increasingly being made visible. So what we need to do is to speed up and accelerate. I hope that all of you will be able to cooperate with us, that we will be able to move forward. Thank you.
皆様ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much to all. Please step down from the stage, panelists. Next is session 4, Driving Energy System Transformation.
It is already 2 hours or so, so I'm sure you must be tired. So please stretch yourself. Thank you. So this is the 4th session, Driving Energy System Transformation. What will be needed? Thank you. The WEF, Prime Minister Mark Carney, how many of you have viewed the video, listened to his speech? Those of you who have not yet listened to the speech, you should, because that having a slogans that you have continued to put up as a signboard, even though you do not believe in the slogan, you need to be courageous enough to pull down the signboard. So everybody, are you courageous enough to bring down the signpost? Yes, at the Davos the meeting, you need to look at the reality squarely. Now, what is the reality for this country, Japan? This is what I have been questioning myself. President Trump is still saying that fossil fuels should be the way to go. But for us, fossil fuels are no longer the choice, but the domestically available energy for us will be renewables. So today we would like to discuss what is needed for driving energy system transformation. You need to look at the reality.
To look at reality is much discussed. Pragmatic is another word that's used. And IEA's World Energy Outlook, it was referred to earlier by another speaker. Lastly, there's a table and numbers. I'm far-sighted, but I have tried to figure out the numbers to create this graph. And this is the power sector and the power mix. The current policies are shown, and so people are looking at reality. Even IEA is looking at reality, some people say, as to what is happening. What is not nuclear, and the reduction of renewable energy. Fossil fuels have increased to make up for this. In the United States, this is the 2025. After adjusting for values, the VALCOE is shown. Nuclear power is very high. In 2050, IEA is looking at the United States as such in 2050, even in 2050. That's the VALCOE. So what remains is only renewable energy for us. So looking at the reality in Japan, renewable energy. Who is benefiting from this? There's a lot of discussion to this effect. It only translates into profits for certain countries, some say. And this is IRENA's cost structure and solar PV cost structure. And what is indicated in red is Japan. And Japan is such that modules and inverters, if we add these two together, it only amounts to 15%. There's the interconnection cost, which is extremely high, and that is a source of concern. In Japan, most of the economic effect value is generated domestically. And it's important to design mechanisms that deliver tangible benefits to local and regional economies. As Mr. Omi has mentioned, it's very important. Even if we import equipment, once installed, it lasts 20 or even 25 years. A median figure would indicate 25 years. The installed facilities would generate electricity for a long time. It's a totally self-sufficient energy. And for specific countries, there are endowments of rare earth where it's concentrated, or refining, not resources, but refining is concentrated in certain countries. But so far as endowments are concerned, it's not focused on certain countries. As Doman-san has mentioned. We need to create a system where supply chains are not disrupted. And Japan has strengths in recycling, so we can give play to our strengths in terms of recycling technologies. Moving to the major topic, we only have renewable energy here in Japan. There is only renewable energy where we can be self-standing. Renewable energy to introduce in large amounts, does it make for stable supply? And some are concerned that the cost may rise. Some may have these impressions. This is 2040s power generation mix. On the left-hand side, the left-hand graph, the first strategic plan talks about this, and on the right-hand side, this is REI's version, which came up with 2 years ago, and 90% RE would make for a stable supply. That is our conclusion. In the 7th strategic energy plan, renewable energy is 40 to 50%, nuclear and thermal is 20%. Which is cheaper? The 7th strategic plan. Do you think this is cheaper in terms of cost? Raise your hand. I'm impressed. We have a very brilliant audience today. Let me just strike out what I just said. The power generation cost verification has been done to calculate, and even with this RE, this is a very tough premise for renewable energy, but the REI's scenario leads to lower cost. That's including transmission line and the storage batteries. And so quantitatively, this is shown. The sun is only available during the daytime, and there are days when there's no wind. In 2022, this is the climatic conditions, and 2022 demands have been the base for this profile, and 2040 is shown. Of course, the climate will change, but this shows the correlation, including the peak in summer. This is the 1 week's supply. What's happening is there's a lot of solar power, 360 gigawatts. Wind is 130 gigawatts. So when this happens, exceeding demand, there's a solar power generation, and the storage battery would absorb that, and that could be used after the sun goes down. And at nighttime, wind power is generated, so there is a stable supply. That is the result. And what is important is, and we've been conducting this scenario analysis for 2 years as a team. What is important is that we should not over-rely on solar power. There is wind power, so we need to have that available. And energy mix is a famous word which my mentor has come up with. The best renewable energy mix is what we will apply going forward. Not just relying on the solar power, we need to rely also on wind power. And also with solar power, there should be battery storage. For wind power, there should be interconnection lines. If there is overland to solar power, power generation cost will increase. We know this for a fact. Earlier on, I talked about how the solar team and the wind team is working hard. So even if installation deployment advances, the remaining issue is battery storage and interconnection lines. Of course, the regional interconnection lines are important, but what to do about these battery storage and interconnection? We'd like the following reports to concentrate on these aspects. First, we have a young researcher, Jiben-san, who has been analyzing models for a year, and the results of that we hope can be shared. So, Jiberu-san, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jiberu, and my research focuses mainly on power system simulation. And today my presentation title is Interconnector as Resource Adequacy. So I will move to the next slide. So as we know, power system is changing rapidly with the large integration of renewable generation, and we have imbalances that occur between regions. And modeling supply and demand become very complex. So we have here an example that shows Great Britain, and we show the transmission line that connects Great Britain with the mainland Europe. So we can see here from Ireland, we have the West Coast line, and from Norway, we have the NS line that connected to, and so on. So based on this one, we have, according to the EGIS report, in 2025, 20% of the peak demand of Great Britain was supplied by those transmission lines. So based on this view, we can conclude that the transmission line can compete with the generation in the capacity market. So I will move to the next slide. So as Taka-san explained in the previous slide, we have a scenario for the year 2040, where we add renewable generation that represent 19% in the supply side. So we model this Japan model that has 9 regions that are connected by a single transmission line. So we have the first figure where we have, it is split into 2 zones, when we have the 16 Earth zone and the 15 Earth zone. So we focus mainly on the 15 Earth zone. And in this case, we have 110.2 giga that connect Hokkaido to Tohoku, and 803 gigawatt that connect Tohoku to Tokyo. And in the Renewable Energy Institute scenario for the year 2040, where we increase the transmission line capacity, largely, as we can see from the previous slide, we increased from Hokkaido to Tohoku 30.2 gigawatt. And from Tohoku to Tokyo, 20.3 gigawatt. So based on this one, with large integration of renewable generation, we done the simulation. So I will go to the result. Here are our results, and we evaluate how much energy was sent from Hokkaido to Tohoku to where the demand is higher in Tokyo region. So we can see where we did not increase the transmission line, we have 5 terawatt-hour, and it moved to 63 terawatt-hour in the second figure. And also from Tohoku to Tokyo, we can see the transmission line increases we have the transfer power that is from 62 terawatt hour to 123 terawatt hour. So based on this one, if we focus on Tokyo where low demand is very high, we can conclude that 16% was supplied by those transmission line in the current case. And where we have large integration of renewable generation, large integration of the transmission line. So the transmission line, we are able to supply 33% from Hokkaido, Tohoku, and others region. So I will move to the next slide. So here we have the result of our analysis that is related to the AUE result, that is the power outages. So, and we have in the y-axis, the AUE, how much power was not able to be satisfied. In the x-axis, we have the different transmission line capacity. So we move from the high by having like the renewable energy scenario that is having large capacity of the transmission line to the lower case. In the current case, we did not increase the transmission line. So based on this one, we can see the power outages increases as the capacity of the transmission line decreases. So with a small reduction in the transmission line, it does a little impact on overall supply and demand. But when it increased from minus 6 gigawatt to minus 8 gigawatt, we can see it has a rise increase in the unserved energy. So from this one, we can conclude that upgrading the transmission line capacity between Hokkaido, Tohoku, and Tokyo region has a significant impact on avoiding the power outage, and we can prevent more outage in the system. So I will conclude with this slide. And from this analysis, we can conclude with these 2 points. Firstly, as nowadays, the transmission line are the backbone of power system, modern power system, as it enable the regional balancing and allow resource sharing between regions. So transmission line are accepted as a capacity just like generation. So in the second point, upgrading a little transmission line in the system has a little impact on the overall system. But with the large increase of the transmission line, so we can have less shortage in the system. That's all. Thank you very much.
ジュエさんありがとうございます。結論はすごくシンプルですけど、これを定量的に導き出すということが重要だったわけで、こういう定量分析をご紹介いたしました。ありがとうございます。では次に
Quantitative analysis has been indicated. The conclusion is simple. But we'd like to next turn to Ms. Kudo, scaling up battery storage. Principal researcher, please.
Now, in 5 minutes, I would like to discuss with you how to increase the battery storage. I'm sure the role played by battery storage, I'm sure you are well aware of this at your home and at the factory. It will be used for emergency purposes and also to bring down the cost levels. Right now, it is now more concentrated to renewables. When the solar power is cheap, you would utilize the solar power and store into battery. And when the cost is higher, the other renewables could be used. You can adjust. And for stability of the grid system, the batteries are indeed very useful. And as intermittency that happens for renewables, try to complement the system. Batteries are quite useful. And as you may know, in the whole world, cost is dramatically decreasing. So we see accelerated adoption of the batteries. On the left-hand side, the line graph shows the cost reduction. This is the operational cost coming down in the past 15 years. It has come to 1/12 level. And the purple bars, you see the single-year installments. And you can see every year it is doubling. And on the right-hand side, this is taken from the International Energy Agency. Right now it is 2024, about 200 gigawatts. And in 2035, it would increase to 1,600 gigawatts. This is the estimates given by IEA. This is mostly pulled by China and also United States and Europe. And these countries have industrial policy or the electricity market where batteries are introduced hugely, and the cost recovery is expedited. So there has been significant increase in the adoption. I would like to introduce the case of California. There are a lot of batteries being introduced. The maximum the consumption, the time zone, the 12% has been covered by batteries for the consumption. To say the batteries are now becoming a mainstay in the market. So this is something surprising, but also very encouraging. Now, how about Japan? For home use, batteries are mainly the examples, and there are increased interests over the battery storage systems for the grid system. This is, of course, the policy put forward by the national government. The METI and the local governments are providing subsidies, and this is the auction for the long-term decarbonized energy source. And not JPX, but there is also a market being created for the power trading, and a lot of interest is seen. Right now, it is 500 megawatts of installment, but 159 gigawatts worth of applications for introducing the batteries for a grid connection. And I have given these issues, and the RAI have sorted out what should be the issues to be overcome. One thing is the concentration of the application procedure for grid connection, and we need to make it long-term. We see the bubble boom happening, overheated situation in the market, even where the certainty is at the low. They are looking for trading purposes, and the national government is coming up with policies asking for additional documents or putting ceiling and cap, and also increasing the amount of commissions to be paid. But how much is necessary for what region are now being sorted out, so that priorities are given where the necessity is the greatest, and that should be the measures to be undertaken by the government. The next issue is how to design the market and the rules making. Of course, there are a lot of trades happening in the market, but the rules do change frequently. An improvement for better direction is something very necessary. But if it is changed drastically and too frequently, you cannot really foresee what may happen. So you need to have predictability for the future, because it will be difficult for businesses to make decisions. So predictability is something which is required. And the market is now very, very active in terms of the adjustment purposes, but I'm sure it will be more lucrative in the future. I'm going overboard my time, but I would also like to mention the importance of the cost of batteries. In China, they have cheap batteries, but the quality is better. Now these batteries are used worldwide, but depending on China alone, there are a lot of risks involved in terms of security and otherwise. You need to decrease the cost, and also to ensure security, try to increase a supply from the other countries. And the national government is doing a lot to make this happen, and the businesses are also doing a lot to make investments into technology development and so forth. Sorry for going overboard the time.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. We understood very well what is necessary where. The plans are being formulated in other countries as to what is required where. So that was very helpful. Perhaps we could discuss, continue discussion later on. Then on transmission lines, how to expand that. Mr. Kimura, could you enlighten us? REI, I'm Kimura from REI. Interconnection lines have been studied for many years, and people agree that interconnection lines are necessary, in particular for RE, the power generators and stakeholders and the government and transmission and distribution operators would see eye to eye on this point. Quantitatively, this has been shown. And OCTO in 2023, it's been 3 years already, almost 3 years. In March of that year, OCTO produced the master plan after the 6th Strategic Energy Plan. A large-scale RE introduction is necessary for decarbonization, and they declare that. On the other hand, a lot of people were saying that it's easy to say that, but it's difficult to do. So let us reflect a bit on what happened. This is the master plan. Several scenarios were shown in OCTO's master plan. Offshore turbines, Hokkaido and Tohoku area, and Kyushu renewable energy resources, in particular offshore turbine power to the demand center, Tokyo, Chubu, and Kansai area to supply interconnection lines are necessary. And this is the diagram which was drawn from Hokkaido to the Tohoku area, from Tohoku to Tokyo, and then FCF 50-60 conversion, Kansai Chubu interconnection, and common line expansion and strengthening. This was the image. There are people who are following up on what actually happened, so let us look. This is such. I believe that OCTO and the distribution and transmission operators are admirable. They have been progressing steadily. Long-term policies have been presented to implement this. This is the wide area grid development plan, and Tokyo Chubu interconnection facilities has been planned. It took 11 years, but 2.1 gigawatt to 3.0 gigawatts prospectively what can be achieved, and it is expected to be completed in 2028. And Tohoku-Tokyo interconnection line proceeded in parallel with this. In 2017, this was drawn up. That was 5.7 gigawatts there, and this will increase to 10 gigawatts in 2028. In REI's 2040 scenario, they're going to add another 10 gigawatts. So we've come this far, increasing to 10 gigawatts in 2028. Hokkaido and Honshu, between the two regions, the recent earthquake was such that interconnections lines were stopped. But in 2021, it was drawn up, and it will be enhanced and completed in 2027. So these three have been studied even before the master plan, and steady progress is being made. And it took some time in some areas, or where there have been progress made in 6 areas in others. And after the master plan, what happened? I believe this is an area of interest to all of you. On the right-hand side, that's the Chubu-Kansai interconnection line. Before OCTO, there was ESCJ, the consultation committee for use of the grid, and it was in the master plan. This is the Chubu-Kansai interconnection line, approximately 3.0 gigawatts going to 6.0 gigawatts, and the enhancement will be completed in 2030. And on the left-hand side, this is also what is included in the master plan, Kyushu and Chugoku interconnection line, 2025. grid development plan was made, and there has been a tender, and there will be an increase from 2.8 to 3.8 gigawatts. It was a consortium of companies that have been selected. 14 years will be spent, and there are plans of accelerating this to challenge 1 gigawatt first, and then, as in the case of the master plan, an additional 2 gigawatts. The extension has been included, and a decision has been taken, and the interconnection lines are making steady progress, contrary to what people may expect. But according to reports on the right-hand side, from Hokkaido to Honshu to Tokyo, the Japan Sea route on 2 gigawatts, 1.5 to 1.8 trillion is the cost of this. This is the largest issue. Renewable energy is abundant in Hokkaido and Tohoku, and to bring energy from there, this is the first project which would be necessary, and I'm sure you're aware of this. Many projects have made progress, but there are challenges which are becoming visible. So what are the visibles? That is the qualified businesses, the Hokkaido Electric Network and Tohoku Electric Network and Tokyo TEPCO Power Grid Company and Electric Development Transmission Network Company are forming a consortium to create this broad area plan, and these qualified operators presented the following. They're trying to do a project finance, first of all, to ensure the certainty of revenue, to secure that the investment can be collected, and negotiation of the contract terms with the prospective contractors, and also environmental and social impact assessments. And this is related to the fourth aspect, discussing and coordinating with the fisheries industry, and also the ship industry has to be consulted. And from Tohoku to Hokkaido, this is a 1 trillion yen project. And so this is a material which I discovered, which I wanted to indicate to you. This is found in Bank of Japan's website. I was looking over some materials that I had, and how transmission lines or power generation facilities were created. That is in 1954. That's many years ago. In 1954, the national budget was 1 trillion yen, and presently it's exceeding 100 trillion yen. The initial wage of high school graduates was 5,000 yen. It's about 200,000 yen. So 40-fold to 50-fold to 100-fold is the increase in initial wages. And on the right-hand side, what this table shows is the 9 power companies' development expenses. That's EPDC on the left-hand side. It was a nationally affiliated entity that invested 100 billion. 1 trillion yen was the national budget, and they have invested 110 billion. If it's 100 trillion yen, it will be 10 trillion yen. So this is what they did to secure power sources, and they moved ahead with projects. And what underpinned this, what supported this, was perhaps many of you are aware. There are 3 factors. One is that operators issued bonds with collateral, the power bonds, and the development banks started, and also fiscal loans and investment. These were the sources, and which powerfully promoted building of power generation, and transmission lines were created. Perhaps this is what we should be doing under GX, taking on something new, such as this one. Whether we can arrive at a consensus within the country is an issue, but Japan has done this in the past, and so that is what I wanted to demonstrate to you. We have taken bold steps in the past.
Thank you very much. You did not mention any conclusion, but we should infer from your presentation. We are running out of time, and I'm very sorry for this. But in order to drive energy system transformation, what would be necessary? Now, I would like to ask each panelist to suggest what would be necessary as you think would be for the transmission line as well, but for the battery storage, or it could be for energy transformation, anything. So from the younger age, perhaps, Jibel-san?
So for the future of the system, of the power system, with large integration of renewable generation, I think when it comes to for us, like doing the modeling of the system, we need to cope us in the demand side. Demand is changing, and also we have in the supply side that is dominated by wind and solar, also that is fluctuating. So how we can use tools that are very fast that can mimic those changes to avoid any shortage that can occur in the system. So, and in the future also, as we know, we have seasonality that is changing by seasons. So when we have wind that is fluctuating over time, so how we can, the mismatch of those power, how we can model them to avoid outage in the system. And we think having the integration of new storage system plus large integration of the transmission line, we can have a system that is reliable for the future. Thank you very much.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you. It's storage cells and transmission lines, which is important. Kudo-san, please. There are lots of things that I wish for. It's hard to select, but as I mentioned earlier, with regard to storage batteries, what would be required where? We want a map that shows this. To create this map, as Jibber-san has mentioned, simulation work is necessary of various kinds, and transmission line planning is also necessary to make this visible. Digitalization to make this visible is also important. So looking at broad categories, you need to create a map, and based on that, everyone will make investments. Everyone can make investments. That is what I wish for.
Now, this is something that we need to do. Yes, I understood. So last but not least, Seichiro-san. I would like to change the perspective a little bit. Now, to thoroughly achieve the GX, we must be courageous enough. I have mentioned about the Showa era. At the time, there was a lot of demand for electricity, so how to supply enough electricity was something understood and fully agreed by all the people in Japan. And right now, utilizing renewables to achieve GX, green transformation. This is something that we need to be prepared and be bold enough to make this happen. And the government of Japan have already clearly stated that this is something necessary. But if we are to realistically go about, then transmission line is something crucial. So from any angle, transmission line is vital. So the necessity of transmission line is something of a given. So how to implement this is something we need to consider, and we need to be prepared to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I talked about Mark Carney's speech. A lot of you haven't seen it. Please do have a look at and have a listen of his speech. people put up signboards even though they don't believe in it because they'll be the thought of as being strange by others. I think it's about time we should bring down these signs and not stories and narratives. We have to base our discussions on data, not stories and narratives. So this year, we hope that together, along with REI, we can move forward with energy transition. So thank you very much for your kind attention throughout the program. Thank you very much to everyone. Please step down from the stage, panelists. This concludes the program of the New Year Seminar 2026, Protecting and Strengthening Japan with Renewable Energy. We now invite you to join us in the networking area outside the hall where you can meet and talk with today's speakers and members of the Renewable Energy Institute. Please proceed to the foyer. In this hall, we will dismantle everything after you leave, so we ask for your kind cooperation. Thank you very much for coming today.